welcome back to day 3 of the Free to Play Summit. In this next session, Clare Devlin shares some light on one of my favorite topics, the power of an intentional learning environment. She joins us with over 30 years of experience, first as a primary school teacher before going into advisory roles for education and early years organizations. In fact, in 2009, she became an independent trainer, consultant, and mentor. All right, guys, get ready to gain some practical insight into creating engaging and effective learning environments for our youngest learners. Let's join Clare now. Welcome back, and I am so excited, Clare. Oh my gosh, welcome. And I got to see you in Belfast. I was so excited to finally meet you person to person. That was extraordinary.
Yeah, it was lovely.
It was just the best. And when we were meeting, you talked about what you're going to present today. And I'm super excited. I was like, you have to be in the summit. So thank you for taking, you have coffee with someone, and before the end of the coffee, you're inside of a summit. So I appreciate your willingness to flow with me.
Thank you, Sally, for inviting me.
Yeah, it was amazing. So if you want to go ahead and bring up your slide deck and dive in, I'm excited to have this conversation.
Okay, so what I wanted to talk about was boutiquing. It's just a term that I have come up with in recent years to describe how we actually present materials for young children so that they can actually they can see what's there, they can think about what's there, they can choose the materials, take them wherever they want to go, use them, play with them, return them. And it's all very much at their speed and their pace. It's really to heighten their sense of creativity and critical thinking, as well as their independence. So that's really where this came about. So I'll just sort of points for consideration just throughout this short presentation, really what is boutiquing. And really for me, boutiquing is about me going into a shop, into my favourite boutiques, seeing the clothing, seeing it beautifully displayed, playing with the clothing while I'm there, deciding which pieces I'm going to have, which pieces I return. And then if I don't want something, which is very rarely, but when I don't want it, I can return it to the shelf again. So it's kind of that same concept. And so I described it, children's resources in schools, one day to a group of teachers, and they kind of got it and they said, yes, we like that idea. And it kind of stuck from that. So that's where I'm coming from. I'm going to show you some examples of boutiques and mostly the ones that we're looking at tonight are how we support some of the outdoor learning ingredients rather than the indoor ingredients, which I also do boutiques inside, but for this conference we're looking at outdoor. And again, we're looking at the potential for learning and discovering with materials whenever they are actually very thoughtfully presented. And again, I'm going to show you some examples of rich materials that have many affordances, and hopefully you'll also see the role of the adult threaded throughout this evening. And again, the main schools that are featured in this, because I work with a lot of schools across Northern Ireland and beyond Northern Ireland as well, because of online sort of platforms now, but the schools that are featured in this presentation are on the screen, and I just want to honour them throughout this. So this is where it all began. One of the schools, St Clare's, who I've been working with for a long time as a mentor and trainer, the head teacher said to me one day, she said, Clare, what are we going to do with this outdoor classroom? This is what commercial enterprises call these structures now. They're outdoor classrooms, and during COVID there were a lot of these built in our schools with the idea that children would go outside and do their work inside these things, which I kind of thought that's a bit bizarre. If children go outside, you want to see children engaging in outdoor learning, not sitting under a canopy doing indoor learning. So this conversation came around about what would we use this structure for. So I came up with the idea that we would create a loose parts boutique, because we were always struggling to find a location to put the equipment, so that the children could access it easily. So we tried this out. So the children actually can go in here freely, choose the materials, go and play with them and return them quite seamlessly. So you can just see it at a different angle there. All the tubes and pipes, den building poles, everything's sorted and organised in its own kind of category. Cylinders are kept together, logs are kept together, community playthings, blocks. We have lots of like pine cones, but everything's kind of in its own space so that children can see it clearly, take it with them and then return it. So it makes life much easier for the children and much easier for the adults. So it really is getting down to learning whenever the children are outside. Again, just another angle. And just to say at this point, whenever the children come into the school, the first thing the adults do with the children is they teach them how to access, use and return the equipment. And the adults, if there are new adults come into the school, they also have to engage in that process, because everybody needs to buy into this whole notion, this concept of access, use, return, and taking responsibility for the space. Because if somebody kind of flags a bit or doesn't return the items, then it's not fair for the rest of the users. And there are many children using this space. And everybody in the school community is invested in this process. The caretaker, he even collected these goalposts and said, look, you might be able to use these in your loose parts boutique. So again, he's tuned in to what the children might need and what they might use them for. So just to look more closely now at the children and what's involved in the teaching of how to use this space. So it's not just about going in and grabbing something and going out. The adults very clearly are thinking about the whole affordance of the materials and what the children will be getting from it. So the child in the foreground in the front here, he's lifting 2 logs, thinking, can I carry these to where I need to go with them? How far am I going to travel? Can I put my arms around both logs? Are my arms long enough? Can I take this weight for this distance of travel? So again, very much embodied maths going on there. The child in the background, again, has been taught along with all of the children, if you're lifting den building poles out of the container, you need to lift them up high, check behind you to make sure that there's nobody in the way, and then turn around carefully and travel with the den building pole pointing to the ground so that nobody can get hurt. So again, very mathematical, very much involved in spatial awareness, thinking about where they are in their location. Is there anybody else around them? The other thing that I just want to say at this point is a lot of our schools don't have beautiful woodland areas around them. A lot of our schools are based on tarmac surfaces with a very small patch of grass. So this is my attempt to make sure that children can avail of really good outdoor learning even on the tarmac space. So hopefully you'll see that throughout. So just to look at some of the big concepts that our children are exploring, and just to say that these are 4-year-old children. Children in Northern Ireland go into school, into formal school at 4, so we really have to work hard to ensure that these children have access to good play throughout their year 1. So this is outdoor learning, this is their play. And the children here are exploring stability. They're building a castle, not a castle, thrones for the king and queen. And Benedict with the blue coat is standing on top of the crates, and he said they're not stable. they're very wobbly. So the little boy with the orange coat goes back into the Loose Parts boutique where he knows he can access the den building poles, and he brings them out and moves to stabilise the structure by placing the sticks in through the crates. And his friend at the same time is creating a machine to chop up the people in the dungeon. And I stopped with him and I said, is that not a very cruel thing to do? And he said, what does cruel mean? And Benedict stepped in and he said, she means it's evil. So again, lots of different play going on in the same space using the Loose Parts from the boutique. At the finish up, the children then stand back to admire their throne that they've built for the king and queen. And we have a conversation about gender difference here. Why does the king have the elaborate throne? Why does the queen have the small bumpy one? So these are the conversations that make their way back into the classroom for a plenary session after the children return from the outdoor session. They talk about stability, they've talked about morality, they've talked about good versus evil, they talk about the fantasy aspect of, is that what you would see in a game or is that in real world? And they also talk about the gender sort of difference and sort of that hierarchy within gender sort of norms for children, or what they think. So again, back into the Loose Parts boutique and looking at how the boutique supports water play. So it's not just for construction and loose part sort of imaginative building like you've seen. The children here are also using the Loose Parts to investigate how water moves and travels. So these are just 3 little videos, they're very short, a few seconds, but just to show how the children use the boutique in proximity to where they're working. And this is again something that's very important. The materials need to be in the location where the children are going to use them. There's no point in having all of this equipment very far away, so the children have to go back and forward, because eventually they will lose interest in that. So just to see how they choose.
There are sailors and she's black. You can fly. If you want to carry it.
So you can see from the video how the children have started to make their structure, and they want to make it stable. They need some more materials, so again they go back into the Loose Parts boutique and they have an idea of what might work, so they make some choices in the boutique and come back out and test them. Again, they want to adjust their plan.
Way more bigger.
So again, you can see as their plan moves forward, they are becoming more elaborate with their choice of materials, their use of materials. They're talking about the little boy on the left is beginning to explore gradient. He's trying to get something that will support the water to travel along the tube, but he also knows that whenever it goes up, it's going to come straight back down again. So there's lots of thinking going on, and they're thinking about which materials will support this higher level of play. And these are our year 2 children. They're 5 and 6 year olds. and then returning the equipment at the end, which is really important. And at the end of every day, an adult with two different children go out every day with an adult and go around and do a spot check and make sure that everything is back. And you know, there are always bits and pieces left just randomly, but it only takes 5 minutes to just do that spot check and just sort of tidy everything back again exactly the way they want it. So the children have great pride, the adults have great pride in the space, and they know that they can actually then just get back to play the next day. Everything is where it should be, so they're completely at ease with that. This is then another school that have just started to work with me in the past sort of 8 months, and again they had a redundant kind of outdoor classroom at the very bottom of like a field beside the school. So what they're doing there is using this in exactly the same way as the first one that you've seen, but they have less materials gathered up, and actually they're able to use the space for doing some work as well within the actual I call them boutiques. So here they are working with clay in conjunction with nature. So again, it very much using natural materials as much as possible, that they're not taking lots of indoor equipment outside. So they felt it was actually okay to use the clay and sort of incorporate it with the leaves and the various grasses. Also in this space, the children have access to crates with pipes and tubes and den building poles and other various items that they will use for building water channels, for doing loose parts construction, for doing den building. So here's the boys that have collected some materials, and these are 7 and 8 year old children. They're in our year 3 and 4 classes. And I'm actually very proud of this, because a lot of our schools, you know, still struggle to sort of value play for the older age group of children. And here we have the children now very much immersed in this, and so much learning taking place through the play. So they have chosen to take the equipment up the hill, and I said to them, why did you take it so far away from the boutique? Why did you take it up the hill? And they were actually, you know, very confident in saying that the ground is much softer up here, and we can actually drive our poles into the ground much easier with the mallets. So their thinking was absolutely spot on. They're making a water factory at this point. So, and then looking more closely at den building, some of the kit stored in another school, just in a big sort of long box. And again, everything's highly organised. The children can see the logs with the holes. And again, because a lot of our schools are on tarmac, we rely heavily on this type of log with the holes bored in it, so that the children's den building poles actually go right down into those logs. So we're not necessarily relying on having grass to put pegs into. Again, lots of clips and tarps, everything organised so that the children can see very, very clearly what's available to them. And again, this is den building with our 4 and 5 year olds, and sometimes the adults have an expectation that the children should build a den that looks like a tent, you know, a proper tent with a pole up the middle and our pegs driven in at the bottom. But actually for 4 and 5 year olds, it really is just about creating a high structure, throwing some kind of a tarp or a cloth over the top of it so that they can get inside it. The very fact that they get inside kind of gives them that sense of a den, so it doesn't have to be this perfect adult version. This is also a den that the children have created using just poles and lots of planks. And again, all of these items were got from their Loose Parts boutique. And back to our 6 to 8 year old children, you can see then the difference in their den. You can see actually the progress that's being made. They know that they need to drive some of these poles into the ground. The one on the left's a bit spindly and weak, and the children know that, so they're having a conversation about how the wind could blow it down, how fragile it is, how weak it is. Whereas the boys on the right have created this much stronger structure, and you can see the mallet on the right hand side lying on the ground, where they have actually stood up on top of crates and hammered all of those thicker posts into the ground. And there is nothing more satisfying than going back to the boutique and getting some equipment to sit down and actually play in your den, to actually use it as a space for role play. Again, this same school has access to a very simple little woodland clump of trees. It's a very small space, but just gives enough of that natural context for them to continue with their den building. And the two boys here insisted that I would take their photograph because they were just as pleased with themselves at being able to create this space for themselves, this den. And again, I just was so delighted, because these are our 8-year-olds, and in most schools, children at 8, it's considered not to be the thing that they should be playing, and I'm thinking they need to play all the time. And again, the support given by adults to the children, the scaffolding and supporting sort of subtly going on in the background all the time to build up the children's skills. So you can see the lady on the left supporting the child to teach her how to fold the tarp, first of all in half and then into quarters, into eighths. Again, depending on the age and stage of the children, we will keep increasing that level of mathematical concept. The picture in the middle where the adult she's talking the children through how to do it, but she herself is not taking part in it. And then the children on the right are totally independent now in the folding of the tarp. So again, all of that return of materials is sort of laden with learning opportunities. And again, these are the boys who were at the top of the hill. They have to take everything back down again, but really invested in returning their own items. And you can see they're quite heavy. So children sort of that sense of their proprioceptive systems being developed, that deep sensory system, getting sort of that feed as they return back with these big heavy awkward items we refer to them as. So you can see again, just returning their equipment, everybody's busy. It's not a case of being told to tidy up and only 2 or 3 tidying up. Everybody is invested in this because they are so proud of what they have. And then looking at our very young children, our 3 to 4 year olds with loose parts boutiques, again, we keep them slightly smaller. And again, this is one that really supports den building. So again, you can just see what den building looks like for these children. Again, the adults had a notion that maybe the children would make something and creep into it, but the children just weren't interested. All they want to do is post the poles into the holes, do lots of pegging. So lots of sort of schematic development, lots of sort of figuring out how things work, and lots of sort of hand-eye coordination, lots of pincer movement, and just the things that those 3 and 4 year olds are really interested in. They weren't ready to make the den to get into. So again, the adults stepping back and giving the children the time to do that. And then Cara, who's one of the youngest children in the nursery, she spotted the roll of string in the loose parts boutique, and so she took it out and started to unravel it. And sometimes the adults stand back and say, maybe this is an opportunity just to watch what the children do. So this is one of them where she just kept unraveling and unraveling to the point where she made like a web right all the way through the play space. So much so that this webbing with string went on for 8 weeks. Every day the children went out, they unravelled the string and made different types of webs. The children became very adept at jumping over it, moving through it. Their peripheral vision was fabulous as we watched them over the 8 weeks. Their cross-lateral movement, their skill in moving and never tripping over any of these kind of strings throughout the play space. They did lots of string work. They used thicker strings. They learned how to tie them around and pull things with them. And then what we discovered was that children whose fine motor and scissor skills inside, which were such a problem. We took the scissors outside and got them to cut the string before they would return it in to the classroom. And the children who really struggled started to show fantastic improvement with their scissor cutting skills, because it was outside and it was something meaningful for them, rather than actually just working through cutting paper and sort of those more traditional things that children would do indoors. And then the children, again, using the Loose Parts Boutique, spotted the blue plastic sheet of paper or plastic sheet, and it reminded them of the seaside, so they set it out on the grass. And then they wanted to carry sand. Well, in the sand the area is quite a distance from the Loose Parts Boutique, so you can see the little boy on the right coming with a shovel of sand. It's like a trowel full of sand. He's bringing it to the plastic sheet. And so the children spend days carrying sand to this space. They carry it on spoons, trowels, they carry it in their hands, and again the adults were very tempted to say, could you not bring it in a bigger container, but just they decided, no, let's watch this. And bearing in mind that the string is webbed all over the place, the children carry the sand, step over the sand, over the string, and they're very skilled at how they move in and out through those spaces. And just the Loose Parts Boutique here in the nursery, again supporting children's role play. This little boy, again 3-year-old, is going for a hike, and in order to go for a hike he needs a hiking pole. So again, he knows where the hiking poles are, or they're den building poles actually, but he knows that's where they are, and he just goes, sorts himself out, and off he goes for a hike. And then again with our year 1 and 2 children, we introduced them to literacy, to formal reading, formal writing, but we try to do it in as playful a way as possible. So again, we introduced the writing trolley as part of one of our small boutiques, so it's like a mobile boutique, and again it's just card, paper, clipboards, markers, scissors, masking tape, anything at all that we feel will support the children's play in a sort of a playful way. So again, one of the favourite things that children do is they act out what is meaningful to them, and McDonald's is one of the hotspots where all of the children go to. So this very often makes its way into their role play outdoors. So you can see them beginning to make their own signage, and we will encourage them to use the writing trolley to make signage in their way. We don't tell them what to write, we just encourage them to let us know through their signage what they're doing. And again, we encourage them to make lists of things that they might need for their role play. So for the McDonald's, the children, we encourage them to make a list and then come back and tell us if they need us to get anything for them, rather than us telling them what they need. They tell us. So the only thing that they couldn't get there was food, and we know that because they actually even put on the little boxes and the ticks as they actually found the items. So for people who are not based here, and we don't spell like that either, but the children are phonetically spelling out their words, they're having a go at sounding them out. The cash register, the cafeteria, the kitchen, a sign, the chairs, a table, food. And here in the north of Ireland, SPUZ are spuds, and that means potatoes. And again, workers only. And again, the children here thinking and sounding out words together, helping each other sound them out, figuring out how to attach it to the string, how to tie knots in the string, how to use the masking tape. So these are all supported by the writing trolley, which is a simple mobile boutique in its own right. Again, mud play, we call it mud stations rather than mud kitchen, because we want adults in particular to realise that children are not necessarily cooking anything. They're actually experiencing scientific concepts at a quite a profound level if we stand back and watch children at mud play. So again, the mud is served by spaces like this. The yellow container has soil inside it. The brushes are here for tidy up, and the trugs hanging in a space that the children can access easily for washing up their materials at the end, or sometimes for just carrying water to the mud area as they want. So again, this is mud boutique, a mud and sand boutique, and small water play. So again, you've got your typical mud station equipment in the bottom. We also have syringes, pipettes, tubes, piping, anything that will allow the children to add water to the mud in various amounts rather than just huge bucket loads. So we're trying to get them to just think a little bit more refined. Do you need a lot of water? Is it just drops of water that you're using? Again, the washing up liquids in the top shelf where the children, they can see it, they can't necessarily reach it, but at the end of the session they alert the adult that they need the washing up liquid, and they proceed to wash up their own equipment, and everything's set back upside down in the mud station or in the boutique. And again, the planks in the bottom are for creating their own modular mud stations. So the children actually make their own stations rather than go to a commercial kitchen, which there's a lot of in our settings. But we would prefer that they actually get involved in making the station themselves. So this is an example just of a mud station. It's just your blocks, and they're actually 2 bricks under the plank, and the children then come set on their plank, and it's their station. They can make this whatever shape, whatever size they want. They can make 2 layers, they can set them on top of tires or wood blocks or whatever, so they can rise it up and down as they choose. And again, the children here exploring consistency, very watery soil, or just adding drops from a pipette to make this very solid consistency of the little mud sort of cake that's sitting here in the foreground with the dandelion on it. And again, there's lots and lots of experimentation with soil, knowing how much water to put in and how little to put in order to get to that level of understanding. And again, very much part of the whole process here, you can see the child has gone now to collect her bucket of water, and she's washing her equipment at the end. After she has had about 45 minutes at this mud station, grinding soil, using mortar and pestle, able to access piping bags, ice cube trays herself, she has mixed up the consistency of the soil to the consistency that she wants it at in order to go through the piping bag. She realises with the nozzle on the end it's too thick, so she takes the nozzle off, and she's able then to squeeze the soil through the piping bag. Again, brilliant for hand muscle development. Great concentration, great mathematical sort of development going on there as well. And then just very finally, sand play. And this is again a large sand area. It's something that during COVID we developed at a school, and it's kind of a little bit away from the main play area. So again, we had to think about a boutique in this space as well. So this is the boutique tucked in neatly in sort of in the bushes. And again, the children here just put tarps over the top of the sand in the evening so that cats and dogs just don't come and leave them a little present. And again, in the boutique we try and keep the materials as natural as possible. So we're looking at sort of natural hard plastic spades rather than the brightly coloured ones, because we're trying to get the children to think about deeper concepts in this sand pit. And some of the equipment are basic natural sort of stones. And you know, this boy here, again, he's a 6-year-old child working through his understanding of forts and moats. And then he lets us know that he needs some water. And again, this is something that we hadn't thought about at that point, about how to get the water into this space. So very quickly moved to get a water butt in place beside the boutique. so that the children can actually access water. And it's much and all as we have a lot of rain here in Ireland, we don't have enough to fill those water butts, so we do have to get that filled once a week. And then again, the children were looking at pulley systems, so the teachers introduced the pulley system into the sand pit, and again all the equipment that the children need for the pulley system, making pulley systems, buckets and so forth, are all housed in the boutique so that they can access that without having to think or without having to go back up to the main school to collect items. So there they are, just at a different time of the year. You can see whenever it becomes very lush and green, it changes the whole feel in that space.
So Claire, how can people reach you?
So that is my email address on the screen, and I have a website which I'm constantly working at and trying to evolve. So that's my website, www.claredevlin.org. I'm also on LinkedIn and Facebook, and have just recently started to use Instagram. So,
oh my,
yes.
yeah.
I'm ever so pleased.
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. That is just amazing. And I am just amazed. I love this whole boutique idea that you've created, because with it comes what I really get in your presentation and when we initially talked is that there's this respect that comes to the materials through the way you're holding that space that I think is really important. So thank you for such a revolutionary idea. I love it.
Yeah, it's just something that has been evolving. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so good. I love it. And just full of inspiration. And I mean, oh my gosh, how many boutiques just for the outside? It just expands the possibility and gives children the tools that they need for all of the different materials that they play with outside.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Claire. That was amazing.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I look forward to hearing more of what you've got going on.
Yes, we do have lots. We do have lots. And sometimes we are a quiet nation. We kind of probably work away quietly in the background.
Yes, I know. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much.